All right, Saagar, what are you looking at?
Well, Happy New Year, everybody. I missed you all very dearly. I hope that you spent it with some family and some friends. Luckily, the people I was hanging out with, for the most part, were able to avoid Omicron. But I'm sure that many of you know, as I do, dozens, if not hundreds of people who tested positive over the holidays. A near universal theme that I heard from many who tested positive or who were left in the lurch by the public health elite was twofold. Number one, they failed us. This story, you already know. Hours-long lines for tests. No tests available in pharmacies. Biden's so-called testing distribution not arriving for weeks. The fact that they never gave any therapeutic guidance when it was clear even the booster shot doesn't give you all that much protection from catching COVID. But the second thing I heard was, okay, now that I've got it, I'm done. I'm done with the restrictions. I'm done with their BS. I'm done with their idiotic recommendations. I'm done with my kids wearing masks. I'm finished. I'm kaput. I could not have coincided better with the new year of 2022. And while a central part of this show is that the elite are fundamentally corrupt and out of touch with the majority of the American people, something I've tried to emphasize is that if just enough of you get together and you make your voice heard, then they are forced to respond in a little tiny way. In their response, we saw remarkably how full of it the COVID regime has now been for the last 2 years, and how we need to keep pressuring them to destroy them forever. Now, we've known for some time that Dr. Fauci, many of the CDC's recommendations around social distancing or masks in schools are not based whatsoever in science, but instead in social engineering, trying to manipulate public opinion toward a restriction-minded goal. And as many millions of people got Omicron and realized, hey, wasn't that bad after all, and others saw that even if they lived under a rock, they were still going to be exposed, a lot of people started questioning the guidance. And just like that, the CDC changed its recommendation for quarantine after testing positive for COVID, not based on any science whatsoever, based upon what they thought that the public could handle. Take a listen.
The purpose of it is that given the wave, the extraordinary, unprecedented wave of infections that we are experiencing now and will certainly experience more of in the next few weeks, that there is the danger that there will be so many people who are being isolated, who are asymptomatic for the full 10 days, that you could have a major negative impact on our ability to keep society running. So the decision was made, although it's not completely risk-free, of saying, let's get that cut in half so that we could have 50%, namely half of the 10 days, and 50% of that time, people can actually be out with a mask in society.
Did you hear that, everybody? Science himself just had to acknowledge you have to balance COVID risk with the ability to have a society functioning. This singular point of criticism has been used by people like myself for over a year to argue for the end of COVID restrictions, and it was brushed off by the mentally ill people in charge of public health, who screamed at us about science and COVID zero the entire time. But now, the dam is breaking. Once they said it out loud, they're not going back. Once they've admitted it, you can't put it back in the bottle. Omicron has been a real come-to-Jesus moment for the public health elite. They can scream double masking and boosters at you all you want, and most of them still end up getting COVID themselves or exposed to it in the last 3 months. All you can do is assess your risk level, get the vaccine if you're worried about hospitalization and death, and then live your freaking life. Once the release of the vaccine, they have done everything that they can to shut that message down, usually by pointing to dishonest statistics of case counts while ignoring dropping hospitalization and death. And in the case of children, pointing to them who were already terribly ill otherwise, and then seeing that the reason that they died was COVID. This, again, is something that Omicron ripped the Band-Aid off for millions of parents who saw their kids essentially get a cold and then brush it off. Once again, it forced a stunning admission from Mr. Science, who has refused to acknowledge these basic facts around children and was forced to do so on TV. Let's take a listen.
But the other important thing is that if you look at the children who are hospitalized, many of them are hospitalized with COVID as opposed to because of COVID. And what we mean by that, if a child goes in the hospital, they automatically get tested for COVID, and they get counted as a COVID hospitalized individual, when in fact they may go in for a broken leg or appendicitis or something like that. So it's overcounting the number of children who are, quote, hospitalized with COVID as opposed to because of COVID.
I think I'm going to lose my mind. What's next? They're going to acknowledge natural immunity? Yes, it's maddening to see Fauci, the CDC, and others admit the basic truths that we've all been shouting for the last year. But here's the thing. It only shows that we're winning. People are waking up day after day to the terrible restrictions that they have been forced upon with no grounding whatsoever in science. And the more they are forced to admit that they don't act with only science in mind, the closer we get to normalcy. The tragedy, of course, is that it's all nearly a year too late. How many children lost a year of their lives with remote school or mass and the attendant social development? How many college students were bilked out of tens of thousands of dollars to sit at home with their parents and miss out on some of the best years of their lives? How many working class kids right out of high school couldn't get an entry-level job because of whatever dumb law localities are forcing upon their people? When you start to answer those questions, your heart actually breaks. But once again, I show you the hopeful way out of this. When even the most stringent liars like Dr. Fauci are forced to admit the truth, then there is hope. It's because the masses of this country are fed up. They're done. They won't live their lives with such significant disruption for something they can plainly see with their two eyes is not a threat to their life or the vast majority of other people's. But there is a darker truth here I want everyone to be aware of too. We only matter when we band together in very, very, very large groups. We can only break elite consensus on a case-by-case basis when they directly are destroying our lives, and even then, it takes a really long time. We are governed not by the masses, but by elite public opinion. It's a much bigger problem that describes nearly every area of American public life, and we cannot fix it tomorrow. The first step of fixing a problem is acknowledging it. So spread the word, red pill the masses, so to speak. This is our only way out. I mean, how incredible was that, Crystal? When he's like talking about, he's like, well.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.